Battlefield 6 is here and now in the hands of hundreds of thousands of players, and the real question is it any good? I'll be breaking this review into sections: single player, multiplayer, Portal, and then some closing thoughts. I will only use footage from the first single player mission, so to refrain from spoilers for the most part. So without further ado, here is my review of Battlefield 6, played predominantly on a PS5 standard system. The single player returns in Battlefield 6, which was notably absent from Battlefield 2042, and this time was handled by Criterion Games. Battlefield has become something akin to what Activision has done with Call of Duty and put multiple studios under one umbrella, and in this case labelled Battlefield Studios. Each studio associated here are catering to different aspects of the game, and in theory should allow studios like DICE less pressure when it comes to their creative talents and toolsets. The campaign is your standard military affair and goes back to a more traditional linear story, unlike say Battlefield 1 and 5, which were more separated war stories. Whether this is your preferred way of storytelling, well, that is up to you, and for me, while I appreciate the war stories of Battlefield 1 and 5, I do however prefer a more linear approach to a Call of Duty style campaign. There are also collectibles scattered around, and before you wonder, there is only one achievement or trophy in this case for completing a singular mission on the hardest difficulty, so don't put yourself through it entirely, just as a heads up. Now, everything you expect from this style of linear campaign is here: curated explosive set pieces, enemy wave-based gunfights, and a globe-trotting adventure to try and stop a typical generic maniacal main villain that is written so plainly it really hurts. The gameplay leaves much to be desired. As I have mentioned before, it is just a lot of moving from point A to B, ordering your squad to engage enemies, and handling wave-based encounters of said hostiles. There are later missions that involve vehicles and more open environment mission structure, and these are a little bit more varied, but they are still sort of underbaked in terms of objective play. Think of say Battlefield Bad Company 2 for if you want like an apt comparison. Overall, the campaign isn't really anything special to write home about. It's basically a tick box check for the most generic campaign you can create. The voice acting is alright for the most part, albeit the main lead is acting too gruff and chiseled to become borderline comical in depiction. Seeing critical reception online, it seems they have come to the consensus that this is a less than average in execution experience. I wouldn't say it's like an IGN 5 out of 10 that I just saw recently, but I'd say it's more of a 6 at its worst and more of a 7.5 at its best. Battlefield, for better or worse, isn't really regarded for its campaigns, and they are more of an attempt to tack on an experience that is essentially a glorified multiplayer demo. Now, that is not to say that they haven't had good moments. Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 do have solid campaigns for the most part, but comparing them to the competition in the military FPS space, they are really lacking in set pieces, execution, and overall polish. Speaking of polish, I encountered a few bugs where the squad wouldn't move post-engagement and had to reload a checkpoint, or if I caught up to them I would be phased forward to begin a cutscene, but overall it wasn't that bad. So if you're buying this game for the campaign, I would say keep your expectations in check, or if it's exclusively what you want for this game, then wait for a deep sale. Also note that the game requires an online connection even when playing the single player campaign, which to me it should not be a thing, and this obviously can be a turn off to a lot of people, so I thought it'd be best to also mention that here, so do come in with the expectation that you need to be always online in this instance. So that was it for the campaign. Now for the multiplayer, the core Battlefield experience. Battlefield 6 is leading with its best foot forward. For a day one experience, Battlefield 6 is probably the best the franchise has been since Battlefield 3 and 1. What I mean is in terms of polish and how stable the launch has been, I have encountered very few bugs, and the ones I have encountered are not very repeatable. Network wise, I've had some latency issues, but I will just chalk that up to the massive influx of day one players, and it's going to take a few days or maybe the first week or two to really nail out the server side issues. When it comes to the core Battlefield gameplay, it does everything right. Guns feel tight and responsive and feel closer in shooting feel to say Battlefields 3 and 4. There is a good selection of guns across an array of weapon types, and for the most part I feel they're pretty balanced, but I will have to try every gun out of course long term. Gun customization is done via a new 100-point system, which I feel allows for a good selection of attachment types or player expression. There isn't a crazy number of attachments, but what is there is enough to really make unique builds to accommodate your playstyle. The iconic Battlefield staple of environmental destruction is back. It's flashy and meaningful, but it isn't quite as in-depth as say Bad Company 2. Some buildings can be leveled, and some can just be chipped away at to just a metal frame. All in all, it's a big step up over Battlefield 2042, and is more curated than say Battlefield 5. I would say the closest comparison in terms of destruction is more like something like Battlefield 3 and 4, but a little bit more dialed up compared to say Bad Company 2, which gave you full expression to level an entire map. But like I say, it's a good step in the right direction. selection, so I'll give it kudos for that. Now, vehicles are strong and powerful. I can say at least tanks and jeeps feel good to use and have viability, and feel also equally threatening when attacking objectives, but I will be honest, I can't comment on jets and helicopters as that's not really been my playstyle. However, I do have friends who exclusively use these vehicle types and have played every Battlefield since Bad Company 2. They themselves have told me that they are improved in handling since the open beta, which was obviously a very contentious point with the community, but they are still far and away in controls and style to the likes of, say, Battlefield 4. So if you love aerial vehicles, that is the only feedback I can provide you. Classes for the most part are in a good spot. There could be some further fine tuning on gadgets, as they have already moved some gadgets over from Recon to Assault, for instance, from feedback of the open beta. I don't feel like there is one class that completely outshines and becomes a meta class, so to speak. In most of my squads, we always seem to have a nice selection of class variety, and that to me is a positive sign. Now, to the most contentious point about classes in Battlefield 6 is their approach to weaponry this time. We now have what is called an open weapon system, which is basically every class can use every type of gun. However, there is still a closed weapon playlist, which is your traditional Battlefield class locked experience. The balancing for the open weapon system is now dubbed signature guns. An example of this is Recon, which have a bonus over other classes when using a sniper. They can reload snipers faster than other classes using said weapon, and also when headshotting enemies, those said enemies can't be revived from a medic. It's the little things like this that still give enough hold to stick to a class specific weapon over, say, any other weapon, but we know the actual reasoning for this is probably just to sell you cosmetics down the line. I mean, who would want to buy a gun skin for a type of gun their class preference couldn't use, right? There are also class challenges or progression where you have to do specific tasks with each class to unlock badges, skins, guns, or even equipment, on top of the typical camo grind, which I will note, with the current 2x EXP, the progression is slow. So you'll be taking a lot of time churning through guns in class-based challenges if that's what you want longevity-wise. On a slight tangent, I have seen the community be at odds about gender-locked classes, and I get it. It's not a personal beef of mine, and I believe player options should be a thing. I did see a recent tweet by a DICE dev implying watch this space, so here is hoping that it can be addressed to allow players who play set classes to be able to express themselves in the correct manner, as previous Battlefields have allowed this. So we have good class balance for the most part, good gunplay and pretty good vehicles, but how does that mesh with the maps and modes on offer? Now, the maps for the most part vary from okay to solid. They're not the best selection, and obviously during and after the open beta, the community was quick to show concern on the game's smaller map approach. Comparing these maps to previous Battlefield games, they are definitely smaller in scale, but there are a few maps at launch that cater to the tried and true open warfare known to the franchise, mainly Merak Valley and Sobek City. I feel like the selection of maps could have been better, and they should have extended out some of the smaller maps to give you more room to breathe, but we can only hope this feedback is taken into consideration for when it comes to the post-launch season maps. Season 1 and the content it has on offer, we're due for another 2 maps, one being a large scale, which will be good to see, and that one's coming not too long after launch as well, and then another medium scale map, which should hopefully give some extra variety. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for future seasons, really looking to cover all aspects of what Battlefield is known for, but I will also mention that even back in the day, games like Battlefield 3, we did get close quarter maps, and some of them are really regarded as fan favourites. So now comes the modes on offer, and the offering is pretty strong. Conquest, Breakthrough, Rush, TDM, along with some of their new modes like Escalation, it is a pretty strong pool of modes for launch, and not much has really changed in their balancing for the most part, which leads me into the particular problem I had during the open beta, and it has persisted to a degree in its official release. Rush and Breakthrough need more work. On certain maps, Rush is not a fun experience. The map layouts or cordoning off they have decided to do can make some maps borderline murder corridors. The objective points are way too close together on these modes. If you were to compare these to, say, Rush in Bad Company 2, it's a night and day experience. I remember the days of Arica Harbour on Rush, and it was fantastic. The runway alone at the beginning for attackers is larger than a lot of the Rush maps in the entirety of Battlefield 6. Conquest plays well, and I think that's how the game has been designed for the most part to accommodate. I just feel the maps weren't well developed for Rush, Breakthrough, or even, say, Domination and TDM, and it was more like they were just scrambled together as a layout that just semi-works. Outside of maps and modes, I feel like we are missing another core pillar of Battlefield, which is naval combat. As of release, there is no map that supports any kind of naval combat, which is a shame, as it is usually, in my experience, adding another layer of depth to the gameplay and more ways of traversing said maps. We can only hope that post-seasonal support brings us back, and quickly. Maybe seasons should be themed like the days of Battlefield 3 map packs and have a season dedicated to maps which allow for naval interaction and traversal. But before I will move on from multiplayer and onto the Battlefield Portal, there is one more thing I really need to get out of the way, and that is this game's UI and general navigation. It isn't good, and once again it's taken inspiration from the likes of Netflix or Hulu, or what even Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2022 was lambasted for. It's cumbersome and unintuitive, even navigating the settings menu looks like a chore, and the only benefit is only slightly improved since the open beta, but it's a far cry away from the previous entries, which were clean, simple and good at displaying the main things the player wanted to see. So lastly, there is the massively expanded Battlefield Portal, first introduced in the last game, Battlefield 2042. This time, however, it seems they've basically turned this into a complete sandbox, allowing you to create a vast array of maps, game modes or fun experiences within existing maps, or creating your own from scratch. We have already seen a variety of experiences day one: jet courses, Call of Duty's shipment map, a typical bot gun farm, and of course expanded ticket core mode servers, which usually are community's preferred ways to play. Some modes like the shipment map don't play well with the core gameplay that is Battlefield and end up being more broken and chaotic than they were in even Call of Duty, but the idea of that you're given options to find your own fun, and if you don't find what you want, then why not try and make your own content and show it off to the world, is a really cool aspect. I however haven't spent too much time in Portal so far, but the potential is high, and if the development team take feedback and add more things down the line, I genuinely think that this is a good aspect, and it will give the game long-term appeal many years down the line. So outside of these aspects, there are issues with multiplayer as a whole. Outside of spawns, map layouts, etc., we do lack a server browser which is currently locked to just Battlefield Portal, issues with lobbies not filling up or even custom searches not searching for what you want, hit registration and connection issues crop up from time to time, and for me personally it seems to happen mainly on bigger maps or player counts. Obviously, as mentioned before, I chalked this up to just day one or week one connection issues, but this launch collectively as a whole is a massive step up to previous releases in terms of stability and polish as a whole. Let's not also forget that this is not the entirety of the Battlefield 6 experience. At some point in the future and in current NDA testing via their Battlefield labs, the Battle Royale mode will be coming into the fray to try and give some genuine competition to the current market, and while this mode does not interest me personally, and I don't feel like the game needs one, I have seen from the leaked footage that it definitely looks to be learning a lot from their last attempt in Battlefield 5 and are clearly taking inspiration from Call of Duty Warzone, albeit with the destructive twist only known to Battlefield. So Battlefield 6 as a whole is a very good game that is just shy of a great game. It is the best entry in the series for some time and takes heavy inspiration from the likes of Battlefields 3 and 4. I feel post-launch support will be make or break for this game long term, and I hope DICE and the crew really listen to the feedback on offer and bring in better maps for long-term play. The gameplay foundation here is strong, the infantry combat is probably the best it's been in a while, and it's just missing core aspects like the naval combat or the server browser, etc. just to really nail it home. I will also make note that the feedback is being monitored really closely, as even on Twitter you can see a lot of known issues being logged and input being made and noted amongst the devs. The level of transparency on display here feels refreshing, and I feel Battlefield Studios knows they need to hit a home run long term, not only with the game itself, but the brand as a whole. Now it would be silly to label this game, say, the Call of Duty killer, but what I will appreciate is Battlefield is finally hitting its stride and bringing some much needed competition to the first person shooter space. It has clearly worked with the likes of Call of Duty now seemingly backtracking a lot of poor decisions made through Black Ops 6 to try and grab some last minute support from its morale broken community with Black Ops 7. So how are you finding Battlefield 6 if you've already bought it and are playing it? I'll be curious to know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you're watching this on my other socials, a follow there as well would be thankful. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all in the next video.